Okay. My name is Claire Smrekar, and I'm a professor of education and public policy at Peabody College, just across the street, of course, of Vanderbilt University. And it's absolutely my delight to be here and share with you a little bit of my research on what we call workplace schools, or satellite schools is another term for it. But before we start, I'd like to get a sense of where you're from, and because that has relevance actually for the schools that we'll be discussing today. So should we move over here?
Sure. My name's John Crockett. I'm from East Tennessee, Athens, Tennessee, and I serve as elected official there. So
Great.
Interested to hear what you're saying about public education.
Good, thank you. East Tennessee.
I'm a grandparent of a graduating economics student.
Great.
Very much interested in public education.
Excellent. And where do you live?
Wichita, Kansas.
Oh, okay. We got 2 votes for Kansas. So you're from Kansas.
Well, originally. Little Rock, Arkansas. All
No.
3 of our sons, Will's the oldest, came up through the Little Rock Public Schools.
Okay.
Which posed some challenges. My brother here is retired here to Nashville.
Very good.
And I'm
Good to see-
I'm a current Vanderbilt student.
Oh, excellent. Wow. Good
in
for.
the MLAS program,
Oh, great.
and I'm loving every minute.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
Have you taught any courses in that program?
No, but I'm very interested in it. It's good to know that you're pleased with the program.
very
Yeah,
much.
good to have you here. Thank you. Now, you folks from Indianapolis. Okay, we've talked a.
Public school employees.
Oh, very good. All right, this is going to be a lively discussion. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm from Tullahoma, Tennessee, and I have 5 children, and we've used homeschool, public school, parochial school, and I spend a lot of time at school board meetings and city meetings. I'm very interested in block schedules versus regular scheduling and different options.
Right, and this, of course, fits right into that nexus of choice schools and giving parents more options. So I think you'll really resonate to those ideas. Yes, sir.
From Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh, very good.
So,
The voucher
uh,
context is
in fact,
interesting.
I was on the advisory committee of the school that caused the going to the Supreme Court.
Wow, fantastic. Would love to actually talk with you more about that. We have 2 students in our doctoral program from Cleveland. They're coming all the way down from Cleveland on weekends to attend both from the Catholic school programs up there.
Then I also was on the charter school,
Okay.
which is one of the
Largest.
almost in the country.
Yes. And interesting, Indiana took their cue from Ohio and took some of the ideas when they were thinking about their charter school program. Yes, ma'am. Hi.
Elementary school teacher.
Great.
New Jersey.
From New Jersey. Excellent. Well, good. We have a nice distribution. Did anyone come in while I was chatting? No. Okay. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about this research that I conducted 4 years ago with a generous grant from the Spencer Foundation. Spencer Foundation is actually the foundation that sprung up from the founder of SRA. Did any of you use SRA reading kits in school? Yeah, so did I. Weren't they fun? Love those color-coded guides and all. Well, Mr. Spencer created that program, made a lot of money, created a foundation, and a lot of us at Peabody College we benefit from that foundation, which is based out of Chicago, Illinois, the Spencer Foundation. So I'll be talking about that as well. But I'd like to start with a short video from a CBS morning show to kind of get us into the topic area. And then on the other side of that, I have a PowerPoint discussion, which I'll share with you. So let's start with this quick video clip, news clip. And it will come up and we'll push play.
A little bit of parental guidance. Now, does this sound familiar? You're at work trying to focus on your job, but your mind keeps wandering to your kids who are sitting miles away in school. Finding out what happened in their classroom has to wait until the end of the day. But for more and more moms and dads, school is all in a day's work. Byron Pitts is in Miami with the story and some friends. Good morning, Byron.
Good morning, Mark. We're at the American Bankers Insurance Group School, the first public school in the country where education and employment exist side by side. Just because all these kids here have a mother or father who work not far away, it's a trend that's benefiting both families and businesses. Mornings for kindergartner Eric Jerkshitis don't include a school bus. He commutes to school in the family car, his mom behind the wheel. Their destination, Miami's Mount Sinai Medical Center, where his mother teaches patients
walk up first. And the head up again.
And Mrs. Schnaps-Taylor teaches Aaron.
Good morning, boys.
Eric's enrolled at the Mount Sinai Medical Center Satellite School. The school is popular with employees.
You know, not running back and forth, pick up the kids at another school. Psychologically, to me, has been great. You know, I have them close in case of emergencies.
For employers, the bottom line is what makes the grade.
The absenteeism was probably reduced 25% from the rest of the workforce.
Can I ask you actually to forward the slides in my PowerPoint from the computer? Because I'll stay standing up here and I'll just kind of nod to you or say next slide. Okay, that'd be great, thanks.
Local public school districts. The teachers and curriculum are provided by the district, the facilities by the company. At the American Bankers Insurance Group School, the nation's first satellite school, 275 children of employees learn in a $2.5 million facility right across the lake from mom or dad.
They can look out the window, especially small ones, and know, oh, my mommy's right over there, or my daddy's right over there. It's a really nice feeling for them.
It's a nice feeling for the parents, too, who often bypass the company cafeteria crowd for more youthful lunchtime companions.
Lunchtime is that I get to sit here with him and see what he's eating. And you see, it's great. I really love it.
Increased parental involvement has proven to be an academic benefit as well as a social one at satellite schools like American Bankers.
The parents are involved on an ongoing basis. The kids do well on test scores. Absenteeism rate in the school is the lowest in the district. Again, because the parents are at work, the kids are at school.
While critics say satellite schools create homogeneous student bodies made up of very similar company kids, proponents say the opposite is true.
CEO's kids go to school with the janitor's kids. The secretary's children are going to school with the women who are men or women who are preparing the food. So you have a real diversity in these classrooms, which you don't get in the public school systems in the neighborhoods.
But what really matters, say participants, is the opportunity to be a part of their child's education in a way working parents never imagined they could.
It's not just dropping them off in the morning. We expect that they'll be taught and everything like that. It's really interaction with the parents that get them to learn and really enjoy their day at school. So, it's all good.
Now, satellite schools like this also encourage parents to visit the school as often as possible. That's why school events like school plays are held during the company lunch hour. Also, there's an after-school care program so kids have a safe place to stay while their parents work late. Mark?
Great story, Byron. How effective are satellite schools for company recruitment?
Oh, very, very effective. I talked to a number of employees here who say one of the three main reasons they decided to come work for this company was because there's a satellite school. Also, an example of how positive this has been, there are 10 new satellite schools scheduled to open up across the country next fall.
Now, Byron, we see a lot of the little shavers in these satellite schools. Will they extend this up to high school? Is there any talk of that?
Sure. At this point, no chance. I mean, Mark, keep in mind, the average 7-year-old may like the idea of mom or dad being real close, but 17-year-olds say, no chance. So, don't keep it to the small kids at this point.
I forgot about that part of it. Byron Pitts, thank you very much. Good to see you.
Okay. Now we'll switch over to some PowerPoint. And I think it must just be these arrows here, right? Okay. There are about 50 workplace schools now in operation across the country. How did I learn about workplace schools? I'd love to tell you that I was conducting research and had found this, some research on this and some evidence of strong parent participation in these schools through this research. But this is how it happened. The company that helps corporations establish workplace schools is called Bright Horizons, and it was based in Nashville. And actually, Lamar Alexander, our senator now, our former governor of Tennessee, was one of the partners, founding partners of this company called Bright Horizons. Bright Horizons started with corporate-sponsored daycare and went on to purchase a company that was developing these models. Marianne Ward was actually the founder. They then sold to a larger company. So one day I'm in my office over at Peabody and I get a call from the Wall Street Journal. And they were calling because they wanted to know conceptually, how did these schools work? Did I think this was a good idea? Were there pros and cons? Well, I had to think quickly on my feet. I had an article that I grabbed from the Tennessean about this merger, this huge business transaction. So it started as a business story. Well, I answered some questions for the Wall Street Journal reporter and then thought, this is really interesting and worthy of research. Did a quick search of any of the archives to find out if anyone had analyzed these schools from the position of, is this good for families? How do family structures and family conditions impact whether or not parents enroll in these schools? What are the upsides and downsides for parents and for corporations? And no one had. So that's when I wrote a grant proposal to the Spencer Foundation. Received the award, and then for the next 2.5 years spent time studying workplace schools. So rather serendipitous, all because of a newspaper reporter's call to me. I started by thinking about what would make sense in terms of the kind of key questions. And if you want to, great, very good. So there are a couple pressures at play here. And first is what we call a culture called to work, which is reflective of a time bind. Some of you may, and I'm sure you've lived this, be very much aware of the pressures of time, the compression of time, managing work and family and other obligations. The American workers have been called the busiest workers. We spend more hours at the workplace than workers in any Western industrialized nation. We're spending more hours at work and far fewer days away from work than any other workers in the world. We're taking fewer paid vacations. We're taking fewer non-paid vacations. So those are some of the work conditions. The workforce, American workforce, 50% of it is comprised of two-parent working families. So these are the conditions and these are the demographics of the American workforce. So this has created a time bind or compression for families. As I mentioned earlier, these schools are an outgrowth or extension of corporate-sponsored child care for preschoolers. And the idea was, look, if we've got child care at the work site, what if we extended that model for elementary schools? Would that make sense? Wouldn't it make sense for workers and for public schools? So it's all in an effort to gain balance, work-life balance. Work-life balance is actually a term that many corporations started using in the early 1990s, mid-1990s, as a way of attracting productive, highly skilled workers. The idea was, we'll work you hard and we'll pay you well, but we also are seeking some kind of work-life balance, giving you, for example, access to athletic facilities at the workplace, corporate-sponsored childcare. And now we're going to introduce a new element to manage that work-life balance, elementary schools at the workplace. Some of the benefits for corporations were identified in that quick CBS News clip. Obviously, it's a way of reducing absenteeism or tardiness because the child accompanies the parent to work and is there at the workplace. The parent is not leaving that close neighborhood, if you will, of the work site and the school to run off to an event or to check on that child. It's all right there encapsulated in that same physical space. So you want to think of these schools as a way of corporations and school districts sharing space, sharing costs, and merging assets. What does the corporation offer? The corporation offers the space, the facility. Sometimes these are small little they're trailers, they're nice new portable trailers, much newer, much more comfortable than most of the trailers you see on public school campuses. And there's lots of greenery, so that the physical aspects are well attended to by the corporation. They want these places to be attractive, and they want them on site. So what you get from the corporation is the place, the setting, and you get the maintenance for that building. What do you get from the school district? Well, in Miami, for example, with the clip you were just shown, they send their public school teachers. Okay, so that's the district's in-kind contribution. We'll send our highly trained teachers if you give us the space. So that's the trade-off. But corporations like this idea because they think they've struck a balance, a good balance between work and life, and merging those two. They also think this is a powerful recruiting tool. And the video clip mentioned that. Let me give you a little piece of that evidence. I was at the Mount Sinai Medical Center. It emerged as one of my 4 sites, and I'll tell you how I chose 4 schools in just a minute. I was in the office of the Vice President for HR, Human Resources. When a call, no, sorry, I had been with the HR director. I had walked across the parking lot. I was then sitting with the principal of the workplace school. A phone call came in from the person I had just been interviewing. That's why it was kind of funny. Principal was asked, is there a spot for a 2nd grader next year? Do you have any spots for your 2nd grade class next year? Because I have sitting with me a candidate for our director of the pharmacy. She would be coming in. She'd be coming down to Florida from St. Louis, Missouri. She's a single parent, but she is our first choice candidate for the director of the pharmacy. But it's important to her that her 2nd grader be close to her work site. And the principal said, no problem, I've got a spot for her. And that candidate for the director of the pharmacy enrolled her child and became a part of that Mount Sinai Medical Center. So it's a powerful recruiting tool. It's also though, and I'll talk about this in a minute, there's a downside to that. And what's the downside to having your child enrolled at the school? If you're unhappy at work, if things are not going so well, if you'd like to make a switch, if you're a nurse at Mount Sinai Medical Center and conditions have just crumbled in terms of morale, in terms of support, in terms of resources, there is now an anchor. Some would say a drag, a burden to stay at that school, stay at that medical center because your child is enrolled at the school. Okay, so the benefits to school districts are these. They're also the prestige of being associated with a Mount Sinai Medical Center, or with a prominent insurance company, or with, in a minute I'll share with you, Hewlett-Packard is one of my school sites out in Northern California. So there's a prestige factor that comes with that association, that public and private partnership. It says to stakeholders, it says to other city mayors, it says to the governor, we have a great public school system. We've partnered with one of the major corporate players in our city, in our state, who have faith. That corporation has faith in our public school system. So it's a symbol of trust and endorsement of that public school system. There are also some logistics. It alleviates to some degree some overcrowding. That's a real pressure in Miami-Dade, Florida. If you know anything about those, they are overcrowded. So any kind of relief valve for that pressure is a welcome alternative, is a welcome remedy for that school district. The idea too, evidenced in the video, is enhanced parent involvement. The parents are right there. You can schedule the events around the parent's schedule. The corporate sponsor is readily aware and interested in promoting those kinds of parent partnerships. So there's again that kind of balance struck between the demands of work and the interests of the school through that transmission of parent engagement at the school site. So I was interested in exploring this type of school. And if you've read the little bio on me, this is a central element of my research. I'm interested in how family structures, how neighborhood conditions, work conditions impact patterns of involvement and family-school relationships in different types of schools as well. I've studied Department of Defense schools, I've studied charter schools, Catholic schools, as well as neighborhood and traditional schools. So this was a new type of school to explore some of these conditions and some of these issues. We were very interested in looking at this new idea of the workplace as a new American neighborhood. Now, what did that mean? When schools move to the workplace, what does that mean in terms of their resources? What does it mean in terms of the relationships established? I was also very interested in how these workplace schools functioned as a vehicle for parental choice. Why did some parents choose these schools and why did other parents not? What seemed to be the flow of information to parents? Was that evenly shared within corporate settings? So to what degree do we have true diversity? Marianne Ward's claim that these are diverse school sites. Well, let's look at that claim. Let's look at these schools as a vehicle for school choice, and let's look at the way in which they use the neighborhood as a set of resources. So as I mentioned a moment ago, it was funded by the Spencer Foundation, and my first challenge was to select some sites. I selected 6 initially, and the Spencer Foundation said, that's too many sites and you need more money. I thought, I love this Spencer Foundation. They're asking me to do less with more. So we settled on 4 sites, and I wanted to select those across corporate sectors because I thought there are dynamics within business sectors that might influence and modify the way in which these schools function within those business contexts. So eventually I looked at the whole 40 or 45 or so workplace schools across the country, and I selected 4 specific. And first was a financial affiliated workplace school. The second was medical, and I actually ended up going down to Mount Sinai Medical Center. I didn't even know about this CBS News video at the time, but they seem to have been well established over a period of time, which was another variable. I didn't want to start with a school that was just getting up and started. I wanted to look at schools that were well established 3 or 4 years into it. So Mount Sinai Medical Center certainly satisfied that requirement. The next was a retail. This was Target Corporation. Target Corporation headquarters are in downtown Minneapolis, and they had a school in an office building just 2 blocks away from their corporate headquarters, which is a huge complex of multi-levels of an office building in downtown Minneapolis. Technology, that turned out to be Hewlett-Packard out in Northern California had established a school on their broad campus, their large campus out there. Just before I started the study, Hewlett-Packard spun off that group, and it's now called Agilent Technologies and is publicly held. So the financial school I'm going to talk about in a minute, that's actually a conglomerate of businesses in downtown Des Moines, Iowa. So it differs from the other 3. That's why I wanted to point that out. The other 3 schools are corporate specific. One of the schools I'll talk about, Des Moines, is actually a consortium of businesses in downtown Des Moines with a very specific rationale for developing a downtown school. Okay, so let's look up close at the first school. In a report, I called it the Midwestern Downtown School, but it is Des Moines, Iowa. Des Moines was faced with a problem that many city centers, including Indianapolis, for example, is faced with. Declining population of middle class or upper middle class families, and a movement or shift of business to the suburban ring. So the business leaders in Des Moines and the education leaders came together and they said, we want to create a zone in downtown Des Moines that signifies that we are progressive, that we are forward thinking, and that we are revitalizing and on the move. We want this school then to become a beacon for downtown development. We're going to be doing other things. We're going to be remodeling particular office buildings. We've got a couple new clients, a couple new businesses coming in. But we think that a state-of-the-art, best practices school, elementary school, could really be the trigger for downtown revitalization if we did it right. So these were forward-thinking, I think, quite progressive leaders, business and education leaders in Des Moines, Iowa. They said, let's make it a magnet school because it won't have a zone. If you work downtown, you're in our zone. Doesn't matter where you live. So it'll be a magnet school which attracts families from across the suburbs around Des Moines, or inside the city center for that matter. For families who every day drive into their workplace, they will now drive into the school, drop off their child, and maybe walk in the, there are, what do you call those those towers, those sky bridges. Do you know about those? I had never seen them until I went to Des Moines, but they're in Minneapolis, and there's some in Indianapolis, right? Minneapolis, Indianapolis, Des Moines, sky bridges, so you never have to go outside. So those connect all the offices downtown Des Moines, and those serve then as the connectors between the school and the workplace, the physical connections between the families and the educators at the school. Again, the idea was we can create maximum parental involvement. We know from extant research that parent involvement benefits kids, it benefits families, it benefits teachers. It's a win-win-win. We can promote parent involvement just due to the proximity of parents to the schools. We can create new avenues for parent involvement. We can actually bring the parents in as, if you want, co-educators in this enterprise. Okay? So this is what they did. They said, let's look around. Let's look at the cultural, intellectual, physical assets of downtown Des Moines. And if any of you have been down there, it's a fairly compressed downtown space, not unlike actually Nashville. Well, first of all, they said a lot of our parents are bankers. Some are architects. Let's get the parents who are architects to help us design this new school, which will be in an office building downtown along one of the connecting bridges. They used the downtown library as their school library. They used the ice rink as a way of explaining the physics of ice. They used the park across the street as their playground in a cooperative agreement with the hotel that actually owned it. Why? Because for the hotel it was a win-win. We're a good community partner then. We can still put our name on the park site, but we can allow it we can allow the school to use it for their playground. There was a children's garden nearby. They used that then for teaching botany and science. And finally, there's a wonderful art museum in downtown Des Moines, and they said, let's use that not once in a while, not on an occasional basis, but let's integrate then the cityscape, the landscape that surrounds the school with the curriculum and course of study that our students are a part of. This is a kindergarten through 6th grade today with almost 300 students. They said if we're going to develop a school with best practices, we know these should be smaller schools. We know that we should use portfolios of students' work, not simply tests and final grades. We know that the students should actually be a part of the description of their work when parents come in for parent conferences. So no longer is it the teacher just talking to the parent. The student actually tells mom or tells dad what they've been doing, how they've been doing it, and explains their portfolio of work. So you can see the intense integration of the cityscape and those assets, those resources, with those of the school. This school's achievement is at the very top of the Des Moines School District. Enrollment is now by lottery because it's oversubscribed. It offers convenience, it offers high quality, it is diverse racially and socioeconomically, again reflective of the range of adults working in downtown Des Moines. The principal, whom I met over the 2 years I was there, met with her several times, she said, we've changed what parent involvement means. We have a range of parents' occupations, so we have that socioeconomic diversity. And she said, we've created the conditions of convenience for parents, which in neighborhood schools sometimes, with parents traveling up to 60 or 80 miles away from home to work, that makes it very difficult to attend school-based events. So she said, we have created the conditions of convenience and integration that allow those two work sites and school places to merge in a way that promotes student learning and parent engagement. Many times I watch as parents dropped off their children, talked briefly with the teacher, and then went on to work through the sky bridges. That's such a permanent memory for me because it was such a different pattern. So the drop-bys, the shared lunches with the kids create all of these opportunities for this kind of engagement that was missing and is often absent in neighborhood schools, which are populated, as we know, often by either single-parent working families or two-parent working families. ROI is the return on investment. What do the corporations then perceive as the return on their investment? Well, here's a list of their investments, and it's not insignificant. In the downtown school and many of these workplace schools, the corporation, as I said, not only creates the space and the portables or new construction for these small elementary schools, they also typically donate computers, desks, chairs. They often underwrite the cost of professional development for teachers in the first summer month of each year. They also, and this is true in the case of Des Moines, pay for an extra teacher or two in order to create the smaller class size. So these are real expenditures. We're talking about, on average, $250,000 to $350,000 every year in terms of real dollars. Some of the cost is absorbed by the cost of leasing downtown space, which, whether it's Minneapolis or Des Moines, is quite expensive per square foot. Okay. Medical Center of the South is my pseudonym for Mount Sinai Medical Center. A very interesting story, unlike Des Moines, very much unlike Des Moines. While economic revitalization and creating a robust downtown was the driving force behind the downtown school in Des Moines, it's a very different story at Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai's CEO had this ethic, this ideal of what work life should be like, and he called it the family. And I interviewed him twice at his, which is a whole nother story, at his place down in Miami Beach. He was no longer with Mount Sinai, and I'll tell you a bit about that. But he talked repeatedly and used this term, well, we're like a family. You have to know your family. He did a lot of walk-arounds when he was CEO. He would walk down to cardiology. He'd walk down to the pharmacy. He'd go up to physical therapy. He knew his people, even though this is a sprawling medical complex. His idea, we already have corporate-sponsored daycare for the little ones from ages 1 to 4, or 4.5. Why don't we just continue that with a small elementary school right on the ring of the medical campus, of the medical center's campus, just across the parking lot, maybe 100 yards from the wall of the medical center. So that's how it developed. It was an outgrowth then of daycare that was already existing, and it was his ideal, his ethic of creating family connections, of really demonstrating care and compassion for your employees. Okay. The medical center is a diverse place. The school is not quite as diverse as the claims would suggest. Who would you guess would be the primary occupational base for the school? What are the parents' occupation, you think? Most of them at the school.
Out of that group?
Yeah. No, not the housekeeping, but that would be interesting. Whose schedule is very much like a school? Yes. The nurses, absolutely. It was the nurses, because they arrive around 7:30. There's a built-in before school care and after school care if there was a little bit of a gap there. Right, the nurses were the primary beneficiaries or participants of this workplace school. There were some members of the housekeeping staff, and there were some physicians, and there were some PTs and OTs, but most of the staff, most of the parents are nurses. And so that was a little bit of a variation of what was being claimed initially. The patterns of communication and cooperation were clearly evidenced in this physically and relationally. Now what happened, I think it's in my next slide. Yeah. The reason I interviewed the former CEO at his home was he had been pushed out by a new leadership team due to the imperatives and pressures around cutting costs. We all know about this. Hospitals are pressed. Reimbursement rates are at least level through the Medicare and Medicaid program. A lot of fiscal pressures imposed on the CEO at the time. The board brought in a new leadership team. They didn't have any of the shared vision of the former CEO. It was all about cost cutting. And they actually asked, why do we have a school out there on the parking lot? What is that about? It's still there. This is some 6 years after the CEO was pushed out. The school is there, but to be honest, it's barely hanging on because the corporate sponsorship is no longer there, which raises the question for you. When there's a new regime, when new management comes in, what happens to a corporate sponsored school? Okay, so there's a degree of fragility, there's a degree of instability associated with any corporate school because it's dependent upon the corporate and financial interests of that sponsor. So a couple of things here that I wanted to share with you. There's the associated low morale with the new leadership team. They cut nursing positions, so nurses were asked to do more, physical therapists were asked to do more. As one nurse said to me, but this was echoed repeatedly, I'm just holding on here until my daughter finishes the 3rd grade. This is a K through 3. She couldn't wait to get out of that medical center, but was sticking there, was staying with that arrangement because she wanted her child to finish what was a very, very high quality educational experience despite the rather low quality work experience that she was a part of. So these are some of the negative consequences that clearly were not part of that news clip that I wanted to share with you at the end of this project. Do workplace schools then leave parents with only one choice? That is to stay despite what might be very unsatisfactory work conditions, but to stay for the convenience and for the quality of the school experience that their children enjoy. The neighborhood school, closer to home, but miles and 60 minutes from work. These are the choices that parents are facing. Do I put my child in a neighborhood school, which is closer to home, or do I think about closer to work? What makes more sense? And what we found through this study is that for most parents, closer to work makes a lot of sense, particularly in those early years. Closer to work means peace of mind, means connection, means importantly, particularly in places where there's a long commute, is the conversation that you might miss, that might be so difficult to squeeze into that time bind I was describing earlier, at the dinner hour, at the bath time, looking through mail, preparing the meal for the dinner time. It gets very compressed. What parent after parent explained to us was, look, this is when I actually have some of the best conversations with my child, is in the car, because we're on the road for 60 minutes. That's actually very, very common in Miami Beach. So this varies. In Santa Rosa, California, it was more like 20 to 30 minute commutes for those families. But 20 to 30 minutes times 2 is still, I think you could argue, some substantive, some value added time. Let's see. I think I've covered that third bullet, this case of risk assessment gone negative. Let me at this point introduce what happened to Target. So I start the study and I have 4 schools. The Mount Sinai school is barely hanging on by the end of my 2.5-year study because of the new management regime. You can argue this was actually a great time to be studying these schools. Target Corporation, what do they advertise? What do you see during their commercials? What are they always talking about in terms of their relationships with public education? Do you ever see those commercials?
They give something towards.
That's right. A percentage of their purchases go to the support of public education. And they've been doing that for a long time. And they took a second look at this school in downtown Minneapolis, 2 blocks from their corporate headquarters, serving about 160 or so families. Some of those families were not Target. They were some regular Minneapolis public schools because the seats were filled. Now, there was a great beginning to this story of the Target corporate school. The Target parents sat down with the Minneapolis public school officials. Can you imagine this? And said, the public school officials said, what would you like? What would you like this elementary school to look like? What kind of curriculum would you like? And the Target parents said, we'd like Montessori because our kids have been in Montessori preschools before, and we think that would make for a real natural transition, and we like the Montessori model. Public school officials said, okay, we can do that. We have some Montessori trained teachers, but we're going to need a little support because Montessori, if you know anything about Montessori, it's very expensive. There's a lot of manipulatives. There's a lot of wooden toys. There's a lot of stuff associated with Montessori schooling, and always small school size. But Target said, if that's what our employees want, these are our top managers, by the way. These are the buyers. I interviewed a lot of these folks. These are individuals with budgets of millions of dollars who purchase everything you see in a Target store and manage those decisions and are responsible for them. So Target said, well, that's what they want. We can throw in some money to help support that in terms of professional development. Target said, well, of course we're going to want the space in downtown. So we think there are 4 floors available, open right now, in a downtown building just 2 blocks away. You want to guess how much that costs every single year for those Target officials? Anybody? A lot. About $400,000 for that lease alone. Then they donated the desks and chairs, and every June they came through that school and they said, what do you need? Tell us what you need. Mrs. Johnson, what do you need for your 3rd grade next year? Do you need more desks? Do you need anything from our Targets? Now, to be fair, you didn't walk through the school and notice that there weren't those red all over, and the kids weren't wearing T-shirts that said Target, and the materials didn't say Target on them at all. One of my friends said, how much of the corporate culture blends in. I mean, are they creating little consumers at the Target store? Are they creating just solely engineers at the Hewlett-Packard school? Is it all about just a mirror of those corporate cultures and those kind of corporate interests? And you'd have to say, no, not at all. It was really, again, going back to that shared space, shared costs, and then a merging of particular assets and resources. So Target starts off with this very, very good story, right? A lot of support, kids are doing well. It's very diverse racially, socioeconomically. That's really due to the mix of kids actually who are from the district, not Target kids. The Target, as you can imagine, were the children of high-paid managers. So you didn't get that socioeconomic mix. But Target looked at the bottom line. This was about 7 years ago, and they were undergoing lots of shifts and merge, and they were dropping off some of their corporate entities, and they said, we can't justify this for 120 or 150 kids or their families. We can't justify expense. We've always been doing this revenue share of a percent of our revenues that go over to public education across the country. We just think this is too specific and too costly. So they closed the school in my final year of my study. So that was another downside. That was another negative. That's when corporate imperatives shift. The costs are then shared not simply by the employee, but by the entire family, right? Okay. Well, this is a little bit of the more kind of the scholarly work that I draw from when I write about this for more research audiences and policymaker audiences. In a way, if you know John Dewey, Will, you know John Dewey. If you think about John Dewey's work and his philosophy of merging seamlessly communities and schools, that's what workplace schools are all about, particularly if you remember that downtown Des Moines school, which really embraced their geography and embraced those resources. So it's about community development for Des Moines. It's about creating kind of enhanced reputation, both for the corporation in their recruiting efforts and for the school district in terms of they now are branded, if you will, by their association with a high-powered corporation as a high-quality operation in and of themselves. These are public-private collaborations. Many would argue that's where public education should move. I'm not suggesting that. I'm only suggesting that this is an illustrative example of what seems to work profitably for both the public side, the school district, and the private side, the corporation. And finally, what I like to think about often in my work is this interdependence, the fact that schools do not live in vacuums. They are not isolated from other social institutions or social conditions. And we call this the total ecology of schooling, that families matter, neighborhoods matter, work sites and work structures matter, that all of this coalesces to create patterns of family engagement, to create quality or less than quality schools, that all of these things matter. And you can't look at schools separate and apart or in isolation of all of these other contextual factors. So I think there's a final set of questions. Do workplace schools undermine the traditions of neighborhood schools? Now, many school districts, for example, have recently moved away from their court-ordered busing agreements. This, of course, goes back to racial desegregation, and have valued or privileged neighborhood schools. Many of us attended neighborhood schools, and there's an argument for neighborhood schools that that's where we should really put our dollar. That's where we should really focus our commitment to maintaining a neighborhood school reflective of all of those social ties, social networks, and processes of support and engagement around that school. Are workplace schools a smart move for corporations, for districts, for parents? And I want you to think about that and get your response. Do workplace schools serve a public purpose, or are they really a private enterprise? In that sense, would you be concerned that public districts are even partnering with private corporations that then create schools sometimes exclusively for the children of those employees? Is that an appropriate use of public dollars? Remember, those are public school teachers that are staffing those workplace schools. Are you troubled by that in any way or sense? And finally, parent involvement. At what cost? And when I suggest that, again, it goes back to, do I have to stay in this crummy work place, these conditions that are not comfortable or satisfactory, simply for my child to finish school? Do we still think of parent involvement in the appropriate ways? For example, how important is parent involvement actually at the school site relative to parent engagement and interactions with children in the home? Those conversations, those spontaneous conversations, reading to children. Why do we continue to almost privilege or emphasize school-based involvement and pay little attention to what families do day in and day out in the privacy of homes? I think that is it. Yes, so we can go to blank screen, or actually go back to those questions if you'd like to answer. I'd like to get your position on this. What is your sense?
Well, I've got a question for you about getting around the financial limitations that corporate sponsorship involves. In a nutshell, would you get around the problem by requiring the corporation to set up an endowment fund that was sufficient to operate the school? And then second,
for some time out, right?
Yeah. You know, if Target really wants this kind of school, then instead of coming up with $400,000 a year, they've got to come up with $20 million.
Yeah.
The interest on which you can support. And then the second related question is, if you come up with this endowment requirement, then does that in fact just make it prohibitively expensive?
Right.
You know, you turn a possibly yes into an automatic.
No, exactly. And from my conversations with the corporate leaders, I think your latter statement is probably the more accurate one. Yes, I think that would turn into a no, because that's such a steep hill to climb, and the commitment is so broad and so long-term that I don't think you'd get that buy-in. The initial buy-in seems like a win-win for all, and they can see that $300,000 to $400,000 fitting within an operating budget that they can muster. Good question. Yes?
In the Target example, most of the parents, I gather, being the upper class.
That's right.
Target executives. Was there any effort by the parent group to keep the corporation involved or to replace the corporate support?
Yes, great question. There were certainly a series of meetings. Can't we work this in out? Couldn't we reconfigure, maybe downsize a bit, maybe not have the 4 floors? See, they used 1 floor for recreation. Can't we somehow participate in the cost, share the cost? And the bottom line, and this was a pretty firm line drawn by the corporate folks. They said no. We just cannot justify, because we don't think that's the right way to go. We think that our broad corporate commitment to public education writ large is really where we should stay. And while we thought this was a good experiment, we don't think this is where we want to stay. So they were only in operation about 6 years, 6-7 years.
And the parents, it was just too much for the parents to subsidize. Apparently,
Yeah.
maybe it wasn't. I'm not sure what the process would be for a parent to subsidize a public school. They're already paying the taxes, of course.
Yeah, they could, right. They could have, for example, instead of corporate partner picking up, they could have paid for the professional development, some of the materials, the Montessori materials, right. They were opting out. Some of those original parents, though, were aging out, if you will. This was a K-3. And they were already looking to most of them live in the suburbs. They were already saying, well, you know, we were going to have to make this change anyway after the 3rd grade, and I'm going to have to hire a college kid to pick up my child. But I think I've got the arrangement solidified.
And the parents of 1st graders are not as affluent.
That's right. That's right. And they didn't have the kind of ownership that the others' parents had, who really helped found this school and define its mission around Montessori education. Yes.
The facility to enter the public school?
That's such a great, interesting question. And when I present this to my students, like Will was in my graduate class, a lot of the students are zeroing in on that as well. And one is size. I guess you might be thinking about homogeneity to some degree. That is that every kid has a parent who's employed by the same corporate sponsor, and the smallness of these schools. The best indicator of that was the Des Moines school, because those kids, there was a track record there, and I could talk to that principal about that. And there were concerns by the parents, particularly due to the size issues. And here's another, there was no homework assigned in the Des Moines downtown school. No homework assigned. And what do you think about that? That was radical, right? This is about 10 years ago when homework is just ramping up and kindergartners are bringing work home. The principal and the teacher said, look at the research. There is no research that homework is a valuable tool for increasing kids' learning, their achievement, or any kind of outcomes we can measure. Homework, actually, they argued, creates tension in the home because it's another burden, it's another obligation in the evening, compressed evening hours. Number two, it's redundant. If I know it and I demonstrated it in the classroom, why do I have to do it again? Think about math problems, for example, or sentences. They have to write sentences or define. I knew it then. Why am I having to do this? This is the kid speaking. Again, and the parent said, yeah, he's demonstrated his mastery in the classroom. Why does that work have to come home again? And the third issue they pointed to is, you know what, if you didn't master it and now you're trying to do that work at home, but you can't do it, there's no benefit there because the child is frustrated, the parent is frustrated, and you're actually creating the conditions that we know later lead to dropping out. The frustration, the negative conditions, the problems associated with just completing schoolwork. We know that all of those accumulate over time and that leads to dropping out of school. So this school and their leaders decided they were all about reading research and looking at best practices. They said, we're not going to have homework in this K-3 school. Well, that was the biggest issue. That was the biggest tension because the parents said, what do you mean? We have to have homework. Everybody does homework and we want our kids to, to go on to some of the best colleges in the country. The teachers and the principal won that. They stuck with that line. But this was the big worry, back to your question, is what's going to happen when my child enrolls in the 4-6, the regular school, after we leave the school, because it only goes to 3. It actually now goes to 6. But at that time, it only went to grade 3. And they have to have homework. It was a big concern. What we heard later is, it took about 2 months, and the kids adjusted, and the parents adjusted. And kids are resilient, right? You're flexible, you're bendable, and the parents were prepared, and it seemed to work out. I do want to underscore that point I just made a moment ago. The Des Moines school is probably your example of the most successful operation here because it expanded from K-3 to K-6. It's the biggest school today. And it's got these multiple partners, which are kind of an interesting consortium of old business and new business. In Des Moines, it's agribusiness and new telecommunications. So that's two different cultures, right? Corporate cultures. And it turns out they can all work together. It's very, very interesting.
Another question. What about the child who has special needs? It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be anything physical. It could be just, a learning disability, whether it's mild or more severe.
Yep.
A child study team, how
Great.
do you help?
That's a
that child?
great question. The principal would sit down with you and say, we have we're not a full-blown public school. We have certified Des Moines teachers, or whether it's Miami Beach or Santa Rosa, California, but we don't have all of the because we're not big enough. See, if you don't have that per pupil money coming in, you can't support the speech therapist or the special ed teacher. So they would say, we're happy to have your child here, but just so you know, we cannot provide the full menu of services that you could get in another public school with more kids, more money, and those resources. We can, though, tell you that you have a small class here, and our teachers are very, very much engaged with our kids on a one-on-one basis. But that's as much as, and we can see how it goes. Yes, Will?
How we talked in class about all the different variables
Yeah.
that children's education and sort of outcomes for education. Of course, being in America, the workplace is sort of our second home. Did you find that in these schools, which they are related to the second home, to the workplace,
Right.
that negates some of the deficiencies perhaps in the home environment? So you see some of those variables sort of stacking the favor
Yes.
of the poorer parents.
Yes.
Because the children were spending more time effectively in the workplace.
Absolutely. Great question, Will. Absolutely. As you can recall, peer effects are very important as part of a school. It's teacher quality is certainly number one. We know that class size can matter if teachers are trained to work with smaller class sizes. That's not a panacea, by the way. Let me underscore that. Just because you have small class size doesn't mean you're going to get the outcome, the high quality education.
Doesn't support that much either, does it?
Tennessee is actually the site for the best study. It's a long-term study and it's a controlled study. And what we found is that it depends on, there's no, smaller has to be defined in very specific terms. And what it turns out to be, you just can't diminish the size, say from 25 to 20. That doesn't get you. You got to go down to about 15 and you got to train that teacher to work in a small class environment and to work individually with kids. If you just put the same trained teacher into a small class, we see this in Metro Nashville over and over again, you have the same issues, the same challenges, the same problems. You don't get that bang for your buck over here. You don't get that higher achievement outcome that you're looking for. It benefits in particular African American males a bit more than any other student. So that's what we know from that. It's called the STARS study, and it was right here in Tennessee, and it was very, very carefully conducted. So the peers are very, very important, Will, because you've got that, some of these children, to the degree that they are coming from lower socioeconomic based families, would be in high poverty schools if they were in their neighborhood schools, right? Let me underscore that again. A lot of these children who come from lower income families would otherwise be attending high poverty neighborhood schools. So when they accompany their parent, let's say from the housekeeping unit at Mount Sinai, to work and then are in this school environment, they're in a smaller school with a highly trained teacher and they're sitting next to kids from families that have the means to take vacations, who have been exposed to an array of library books, for example, who have a broad vocabulary because there's a lot of verbal exchange in that family. And we know that there are different patterns in lower income families. That's not prejudice, that's proven by research. So we know that those peer effects are powerful effects. And so that's a very, very good point. So there's an equity issue here as well.
Are housekeeping staff given equal benefits to attending the school as nurses and physicians?
Yes, it's a, well, let me, I said yes probably too soon because there is a first come, first serve. So there's enrollment day for the kindergartners. Now tell me the problem with that. Why is that? A lottery would be better, probably. But first come, first serve benefits particular families typically. Do you know why?
Sure, because the better educated people will anticipate the problem and cause themselves to be first.
Yeah. See, those families tend to be connected to the social networks. They're all talking about what school their kids are going to go to. They have perhaps, and this was one of the key aspects of the study, that was one of those questions, is who's choosing and who's not, who's aware of these benefits or options and who may not be. And that we just know that parents of higher educational attainment levels, higher occupational status positions, and greater incomes tend to have the social networks that produce broad channels of information. And you also have the resources typically to kind of make that happen. You don't have a second job if you're a nurse, but if you're in housekeeping, you may very well be working at a hotel or restaurant in the evening hours. So it makes it just difficult to manage these decisions. So no, it's not a level playing field when you have first come, first serve, because the people at the front of that line tend to be the families with more resources. We know this in terms too of magnet school applicants. When there's a first come, first serve, it benefits the families that are two parents, that have two cars, that are locked into these social networks stocked with channels of information. So we know that, so a lottery is really more fair. If equity and social justice and fairness is one of your values, then we know that a lottery, because you have a broad application period, let's say the month of May, and you just drop it in and then it's a lottery.
Did you develop evidence that these schools were more successful educationally? Did the kids do better?
They do well. That's not to say that there aren't other schools with a higher SES population also doing well. So I'm not saying that they are outperforming every school in the district, but they are doing well, yes.
They would attract good teachers, I would.
Yes, why do you think so?
Well, the parental involvement.
Yeah.
But more cohesive, more homogeneous
Right.
class situation.
Strong sense of community, right.
If it's a typical teacher contract, the good teacher can choose to stay.
That's right.
Not choose to leave. And that would be a benefit.
Yes.
Wouldn't discipline be a big issue if you're a teacher?
Because of the parent, if you're going to discipline the kid, tell me, unpack
I'm just
that.
saying, you say, why would a teacher rather be there?
Oh, discipline, yes.
When you got a parent that's this involved
Yeah.
and they're that close.
And they're that close, they can be there.
Discipline sort of goes.
Yeah.
For a teacher, if you don't have to deal with discipline, then you educate.
Yeah. All you have to do is pick up the phone and that parent can be right. Now, That didn't tend to, these are little kids too, they're K3, that would probably manifest a little bit more in a year or two. But absolutely.
Sixth grade,
Yeah, absolutely. They're right, they can be there in a minute, that's right. And they often are. Yes?
I apologize for stepping out one of the city mayor issues. You may have covered this, but back to the question up here. Is it a smart move?
Yeah.
For the district, you're looking at cost sharing, saving money. But as you said, if you don't put in a long-term commitment and those children are put back into the school district.
Yes.
And in budget time like we have right now.
Yes.
And it's not a huge school in a big district, but and I don't know if you had to follow up with that target or not.
In Target, in particular, it could create a bulge that might be more. It depends on the geography. It depends on the particular site. But that's a fair question and concern, I think, for school districts. I guess you could say, fortunately, in the Minneapolis case, there was wide distribution of those kids back into suburban schools. So no single school district took a large hit, right? Now, I want to say, when I've pitched this idea to Nashville, because we are struggling with some of the same conditions, the outflow of businesses, the outflow of middle-class families, and suggest that you take a look at your city assets. And I said to the Nashville business leaders I was meeting with and education leaders, Nashville has at least 3 assets, right? We have the arts community. That's both the visual arts and obviously the performing arts. We have a wonderful art museum. Why not have, for example, the Frist Museum School? And that could be a magnet school, and it's right over here on West End if you guys have been to that. Or if not, I encourage you to visit the Frist Center. So you could create that as the corridor. That becomes a school attendant zone. Anybody working in downtown, you would literally drive by the Frist Museum, drop your children. You'd be at the most maybe 4 blocks away from that workplace school, and you'd be building off of the assets of Frist. We're also a city of many medical centers. So it's ideal, again, for placing a workplace school right within that St. Thomas or Baptist or what Vanderbilt operation, or Meharry. The final piece is higher education. We are a city of higher education institutions, and that's another way, I think, of building off assets. So what I would encourage you maybe take away from this is think creatively. Think about a city's assets and build your workplace school around those. At the same time, you're creating an authentic choice for parents. You're creating perhaps more diversity within those school corridors and classrooms, and you're creating a high-quality educational environment that I think is at least worthy of a second look. So I better leave you with that. Thank you very much for coming. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you.